The first time we start the SketchUp application after running the vray installer process, we don't really have to do too much in order to find vray's main set of controls. This is because on launch, we get this handy floating toolbar that gives us access to the vast majority of the controls that we will use when working with vray. Now, if for some reason we close this toolbar down and need to find it again, we can just come up to the View menu, come to the Toolbars, and from the Flyout menu, come down and choose the vray for SketchUp option. What we're going to do over the next few minutes in this video is just examine the options that we get access to by means of the vray toolbar. As you can see, the first icon we get on the toolbar is in the form of a letter M. If we hover over this icon, the tooltip tells us that it will bring up the vray for SketchUp material editor. Now in Chapter 5, we will be coming back to the material editor and spending quite a bit of time in here. But for now, we just need to know that this is where we edit vray materials in our scenes. Coming back to the toolbar, we can see that the next icon is in the form of a letter O. This stands for Options Editor. Now, this dialog houses the vast majority of the tools and controls that we will work with when rendering with vray in SketchUp. One very cool feature worth mentioning here is the fact that we can load, save, and reset to default all of the options in this editor. So we can, for instance, set up a number of the controls in here for a particular rendering scenario. Let's say we want fast preview renders. We can set that up and then save the option set to disk and have access to it anytime we need. This means, of course, we don't have to go through and manually set up the options all over again each time we want to work with fast preview renders. And, of course, we can set up as many unique rendering option sets as we need. We can keep them all to hand, ready to load at a moment's notice. Now, admittedly, on first inspection, the huge amount of options available inside of this dialog can seem quite overwhelming, especially if we are new to lighting and rendering in a 3D application. The simple truth is that whilst vray does offer a huge amount of control over the rendering process and can be fine-tuned to the nth degree if we want or need to, still we can get extremely good results from vray by just working with a handful of the options available in this dialog. Hopefully, this will be demonstrated to you throughout this training course. The next option on our vray toolbar is the R for Render icon, or Start Render icon. Clicking on this will initiate a render of our current SketchUp scene. Once initialized, our render will appear inside the vray frame buffer window. Now, the frame buffer itself houses a number of features, a number of tools that can come in very handy when working with our vray renders. We have tools along both the top and the bottom of the window. The bottom set being particularly interesting as many of them allow us to perform instant exposure and or color corrections to the data stored in the vray frame buffer itself. Next on our toolbar comes the ubiquitous Help icon in the form of a question mark. Now, this option used to take us to the ASG Viz website. They were the original developers of vray's implementation into SketchUp. Now, however, it simply takes us to a general information page on the Chaos Group website. Chaos Group, of course, being the creators of the vray render engine. If we do need to access the latest help files, the place to go is www.spot3d.com. This website houses the help files for all versions of the vray plugin. Next on the toolbar, we come to the Frame Buffer icon, which naturally enough comes in the form of the letter F. If in our current SketchUp session we have already performed a render using vray, then clicking on this icon will bring the Frame Buffer window up for us with the last render showing in it. If we haven't performed a render in our current session, then we get a warning dialog that says, "No frame buffer to show, the VFB is not created until a render is started." The next 4 icons on the toolbar all allow us to create specific vray light types with just a few clicks of the mouse. Now, as each of these will be examined in Chapter 2 of our course, we're just going to skip over them for now. Finally, we have icons that allow us to create a couple of unique vray geometry types. These are the vray sphere, which gives us a perfect geometric sphere in the scene, and the vray plane, which gives us an infinite plane in SketchUp. Now, if we prefer to work with menu items as opposed to having toolbars and icons floating around, All of this same functionality can be accessed through the plugins menu. All we have to do is come to the vray option, and then using the flyout menu we can access all of the same tools and features. So now that we are up to speed regarding how to access the vray feature set inside of SketchUp, it's time to move on to working with those tools in earnest. In the next chapter, entitled Lighting Up the Place, we'll start to look at vray's lighting tools.